Hello, welcome to Lil's Vintage World. This video is going to be one of my history book reviews for you, where I take some history books and review them. I will leave links for them in the description bar below, as long as I can obviously find them all. Right, starting off, I'm going to start with one that I was kindly sent for review. I was so excited to receive this, and it is Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, Elizabeth I's Secret Lover by Robert Stedall. I've read a book by Robert Stedall before, which was on Henry, Lord Darnley, and I really enjoyed that one. This one I really enjoyed. I thought it was so good. You know me, I love Elizabeth I, and I'm really interested in her and her relationship with Robert Dudley. So I had to read this book. Literally as soon as it came through the letterbox, I started reading it. So this book is split into three parts. Part one is pre-Elizabethan ups and downs, and that talks about the Dudley family in general and their kind of rise to power and their falls and things like that, because there was a lot of rises and a lot of falls within the Dudley family, some of which ended up without their heads on their shoulders. So that is discussed about there. And we go through all the way to the end of Mary I's reign. We also talk briefly a bit about Elizabeth in there as well, because sometimes Robert and Elizabeth kind of mirrored each other, so they knew each other from childhood, from when they were 8, when, you know, Dudley was in power, not Robert Dudley. That would be strange. And Robert Dudley and Elizabeth knew each other from when they were about 8 years old, and, you know, childhood together and play and learning and all those things. And then they both ended up like in the Tower and stuff like that. So they do have similar things that they can kind of reflect back on, and, you know, those things where you want someone in life that, you know, they kind of have gone through similar things, so you can talk to them about it. Anyway, I'm waffling. Part two was my favourite, and it's called Elizabeth's Favourite, and it is about their relationship from the early part of her reign. So we talk about Elizabeth's accession to the throne and where Robert was placed. So immediately he was placed as Master of Horse, and there is one section in this, one chapter, and chapter 11 is called The Not So Virgin Queen, so you can guess what that one's about. I love this this part. I thought it was really interesting. And then part 3, we talk about political advisor and military commander, which I thought was rather interesting, because a lot of books on Robert Dudley, they do focus on his relationship with Elizabeth, and they often miss out the fact that he was someone who was not only a political advisor, and she did listen to him, because as well as, you know, she trusted his opinion, he was, you know, her best friend, as well as other things that some people might say about them. But also he did have military aspirations as well. So it's really important that that's being put in here. And Robert Stedall has a really interesting writing style. I enjoy it. It's informative, and I always enjoy his books. It's not the type of emotional non-fiction read that sometimes I adore, which kind of stops this book from being the 5-star. If this had like this emotional writing style to it, I think it would be a 5-star book, but it's not. That's just not how Robert Stedall writes. But it's really informative. I feel like he put a really fair representation of Robert Dudley in this book. I feel like a lot of, particularly films and TV shows, they focus on obviously Elizabeth, but then there's always that discussion of Robert Dudley, and he's always that kind of side note, and it's nice to have more books out there about him, and I think there should continue to be more in the future. So really enjoyed it. Go and pick it up, because I think loads of you will really love it. The next book I picked up, I was just on the Elizabeth bandwagon, and I thought I'd do a little reread, and that is of this book. This is Elizabeth by David Starkey. I don't know if you can see, my copy's quite old. It's from 2001, I think, and this is my copy that I had as a child. It's the first book I ever read that was just on Elizabeth, and I love it so much. My copy actually does this, because I have read it so many times. Books don't do this very often, the kind of British books. Mine does, just because it's been read so many times. I read it so much as a child, and this was my first gateway into Elizabeth and finding out so much about her and her early life, and just really falling for her and finding her such an inspiration and so amazing. And I thought, you know what, I haven't reread it in quite a few years, and I used to reread it. Literally, when I was a kid, I used to finish reading it and then start it again, because that's the type of person I was. And I haven't read it for a really long time, so I thought I'd give it a reread again. It kind of writes, how it's written is how David Starkey kind of speaks, and I do enjoy that. This book is, I think the subtitle of this is Apprenticeship, if I'm right. Yes, Apprenticeship, Elizabeth Apprenticeship. And it's kind of her learning the ropes to become the great monarch that she becomes. And it's up to like the early parts of her reign sort of thing. So it goes through her childhood and her adolescence, all the highs and lows that she goes through, mostly lows, and the different reigns and education, her many stepmothers, and all those different things that she goes through. And it's a brilliant book, 5-star every single time that I read it. It's just great, so pick it up if you haven't already. And then I thought I need to come away from reading books about Elizabeth because I was just getting a bit carried away. So I picked up a book about the suffragettes instead, because if you go from one love, let's go to another. And I picked this one. This is Hearts and Minds, The Untold Story of the Great Pilgrimage and How Women Won the Vote by Jane Robinson. I've read a book by Jane Robinson before and really enjoyed it. And this one I had for Christmas a year or two ago, and I was like, why haven't I read it yet? So I finally got around to reading it. So this book focuses on the women's suffrage movement. So often when we think about women acquiring the right to vote, we think of the suffragettes, we think of the militant campaigns, but this is the suffrage movement, in particular the NUWSS, the National Union of Women's Suffrage Society, and we focus on a pilgrimage that took place where women and men went up and down the country in a pilgrimage to talk to people about having the right to vote, because one of the arguments for women not having the right to vote was that women didn't want it, apparently. And so they went up and down the country and was talking to people about, you know, what suffrage would do for women, what having the right to vote would enable them to then achieve in terms of law for bettering themselves and bettering their families. And that's what this book is about. Now, I, as I said, have read a book by Jane Robinson before, and I really enjoyed that. I thought it was great. So I knew her writing style and I knew I'd enjoy it. Now this book I did enjoy, but I didn't love, which is a bit of a shame. The problem with this book is it's a real build-up. And actually the book that it's talking about the pilgrimage. The pilgrimage doesn't happen until like the middle of the book. And then before, the few chapters before is like setting it up, and then the chapters after is like telling you what happens afterwards. And that's fine, but it's not just a book about the pilgrimage. It's about the whole thing as an entity. So I liked it. Had it been just about the pilgrimage, then I think I'd have liked it more. I think this book is great for people kind of just getting into learning about the women's suffrage movement. I think this is a great place to be. For people who know a bit more, perhaps not, but it is still enjoyable, and Jane has a wonderful writing style, which is just wonderful. And then to finish off, I picked up some Beatrix Potter. This is Beatrix Potter's Gardening Life, The Plants and Places That Inspired the Classic Children's Tale by Martha McDowell. I've had this on my wish list for ages and finally got it and got around to reading it. Now this book is charming. It is kind of what it says on the tin. So it looks at Beatrix Potter's life and how plants and gardening have inspired her, and the gardens and plants that she's had around her. So we talk about, very famously, Hilltop Farm, but we also talk about the gardens that she had in London and different places like that. And what I really like about this is there'll be pictures of, say, Hilltop Farm, and then there'll be a picture of her, one of her stories, and she's like drawn in the gate or she's drawn in like the staircase from it, or she's drawn the doorway and the plants around it, and it's wonderful. It's great that you can see that there's real inspiration there. I mean, she's writing children's books about animals. I mean, you can tell that she's been inspired by nature, and it's just wonderful. This book is absolutely full of different pictures talking about her life, but in terms of plants and nature that has inspired her, and it's an absolute dream. If you are, like me, a fan of both Beatrix Potter and gardening, you'll really enjoy this book. It is great. So that's it for this video. I hope that you've enjoyed it and you've enjoyed listening to me rant about these lovely, lovely books. And I have enjoyed all of them to some degree, some more than others, but that is just the way that the world works. I hope I have inspired you now to go and pick up one of these books, if not all of them, because they all deserve to be read. And I shall see you soon for the next video. So chat to me in the comments, give it a big like, and I will see you soon for my next video. Take care for now. Bye.